Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters of all IIM community, let us begin our program by reciting Kitab Al-Fatiha. Our respected guest for today, Mr. Ali Fikwan Muhammad, all IIM community, and also ladies and gentlemen who join us via live Zoom and also live YouTube. Thank you so much. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome and thank you for all of you for joining this Integrity Talk Series number 1, 2024, organized by the Integrity and Governance Unit Management Services Division, IIUM. To all attendees, we would like to inform you that this talk can be followed online, which is through Zoom, and also live streaming on the YouTube channel of IIM MSD Competency Development. And do share the link to all of your colleagues so that the more the merrier. This is a friendly reminder to all the participants to sign in into your attendance and fill in the evaluation form within 24 hours after the end of the program. We thank you again for your participation. And once again, it's also great honor and pleasure to welcome our speaker for today, which is Mr. Alif Iqbal Muhammad, the partner of Audit and Assurance at Al Jafri Salihin Kuzaimi PLT, to share with us his expertise and experience as a meticulous chartered accountant, especially in the area of professional audit in a corporate company and also industries. And Mr. Alif Iqwan today will deliver a talk entitled Elevating Integrity Culture Lessons from the Corporate World. Mr. Alif, Assalamualaikum, how are you?
Salam. I'm good, thank you.
All right, good. All right, okay, Mr. Alif, and all, maybe before we begin, let me just read a brief biography of our speaker for today. So, Mr. Alif Iqbal Muhammad, as I mentioned just now, is a partner in audit and assurance at Al Jafri Salihin Kuzaimi PLT, and he obtained his diploma and Bachelor of Accountancy honors fast track program from University Technology Mara, and he obtained his Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, or we call as ACCA, from Kaplan Financial College London from 2010 until 2011. And Mr. Alif is a meticulous chartered accountant with over 13 years of audit experience in performing external audits for clients in various industries, and had a few years of experience with regulatory bodies, performing several surveillance activities, including compliance with professional standards, legal and regulatory requirements. And maybe if our audience are familiar with the term Big Four, in accounting. He also had experience in working in EY and Young, and also is a practice review manager at the Malaysian Institute of Accountants itself. Thus, without further ado, with this, I respectfully call upon Mr. Alif Iqbal Muhammad to deliver his talk. Please welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Saudara MC Muhammad Afiq. Before I start, I just want to confirm if you all can hear my voice loud and clear.
Yes, sure.
Okay, all right, sure. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning. I believe the participants today is the academic and administrative staff of IIUM. The rest of the participants, guests that are joining us, I believe we also have live stream via YouTube, so welcome. And I hope everyone is doing well. And first and foremost, before I start and before I begin, I would like to express my utmost gratitude and appreciations to IIUM for having me, for inviting me here to be here today in this great event. And I mean, at the bottom of my heart, I think it's such a great honor for me to be here and to share a little bit of my little experience that I have in the industry and a bit of insights, and I think more towards sharing of my experience throughout my journey and career as a professional accountant, as well as I used to be a regulator before. And I think we will touch and we will discuss, and I will talk about the integrity and the corporate world as the topic suggests. So these two things seems to be when we talk about integrity and corporate world is something that cannot be separated, right? So that's why it comes hand in hand. And in fact, it is very interesting topics for us to go through today. And with regards to the topic specifically, we are going to go through topics about integrity. How do we elevate the integrity culture, and especially when it comes to the corporate world. And the topics also touch about lessons from the corporate world. And when we look at the topic itself, the words lessons there, when we talk about lessons, right, we'll be looking at some of the corporate failures, right, some of the corporate mismanagement, and how we can learn from there, and how integrity plays its part or plays its role. And from that, right, from that sharing, I hope that we should be able to understand and we should be able to appreciate the importance of integrity, right, in preventing those failures and why it should be elevated, right, especially in the corporate world. Right, so let me just share my screen, and hopefully MC can share. I can confirm if you can see the screen.
All right, sure. Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. So thank you very much for the introductions from the MC. So I just want to touch a bit about myself, right? And because I think being in audit for so many years, and when we talk about integrity, we as auditors or we as accountants, we are tested with integrity every single day, right? We face a lot of situations, we face a lot of circumstances in dealing with our clients, and especially when we talk about um, uh, when we are being tested with integrity, it comes with a lot of examples. Like in our case, we always have to come across a situation where we have to deliver difficult messages to client, right? And of course, the messages that we are going to deliver is the right message, and it's the things that have to be in compliance with certain things or certain standards, right? And the clients might not be, and that particular messages may not be favorable towards them. So hence, it is actually a difficult message to deliver. And we always got the intimidations, right? We always been intimidated by client. So integrity plays an important role, especially in our line as professional accountants, and of course in the corporate world. And another example is that, I mean, in my case, and from my experience, there will always be time where client would like to work things their way, right? And like to, maybe they would like to depart from certain accounting standards, right? Out of the personal interest or the financial the company's interest, and probably to work things around the standards, right, to achieve their objective. I think especially financially, right? So this is where integrity plays an important role, because without it, right, we would then be um, accepting what the client has been requesting or suggesting, and without looking at the consequences, whether it is a right thing to do, right? And a breach of fundamental principles of integrity, right, arises when a professional accountant or um, anybody in the corporate world, right, offers or accepts or encourage others to accept, to offer or to accept an inducement, for example, where the intent is to improperly influence the behavior of the recipient. So in our case, I've give you a few examples just now, right? So we have to be wary about that because that could be the breach of the integrity. And being an accountant, we are guided, and it is actually mandatory for us to comply with certain code of ethics, right? A principles that amongst others is the integrity, right? So that's why it is very important that in our line of work, um, we have to make sure that we have the integrity, the objectivity, and the compliance to the code of ethics in carrying out our daily works. Right, so that's a little bit about my experience. And I think how we manage this, and especially at least for me personally, is that whenever you encounter the situations, you always have to, I would say, remind yourself, right? Um, you have to um, remind and reflect again the purpose of your job, right? You have to stay true to your job. Remind yourself every single day what could be the repercussions or the consequences that we could face on acting in such a way without integrity or acting in a way of dishonesty. What could be the impact or the consequences that it could have in our life, right? And of course, when we talk about repercussions or consequences, we have to look into from the religion aspect as well. What would be the implications, right? So, and I believe most of us here, if it's not all, are Muslims. So I believe acting in such a way of dishonesty, it is actually prohibited, right, in our religion. So, of course, to stay in the cause, right, of integrity, you have to always keep reminding yourself about the consequences. Okay, so yeah, that's a little bit about the experience or what I have faced, right, during my time, um, the 13 years of experience in providing services. And I think some of those years I've been in regulator, and of course, I have been in regulatory bodies doing regulations. So of course, in regulatory body, the level of integrity have to be have to be at another level. You have to elevate a little more because you are the one that regulates people, right? And what are regulators without integrity? So the regulators have to uphold that. So during the 13 years of my experience, or integrity plays an really important role in my daily work. Okay, so I think let us begin with the word integrity before we go deep into elevating the culture. Okay, we need to understand what does it mean first and why does it matter, right? So I just want to start with a quote, um, integrity at work, the bedrock of excellence, the quote by John D. MacDonald. I think he is a American novelist, right? And what he said about integrity is, integrity is not a conditional word. It doesn't blow in the wind or change with weather. It is your inner image of yourself, and if you look in there and see a man who won't cheat, then you know he never will. Right? So this is quite a powerful words or a powerful quotes that you can always use whenever you face the situations that you have to apply the integrity, right? So when he said about integrity is not a conditional word, right? What it means is that integrity should not be subject to any conditions or any limitations. So, in other words, integrity is unwavering and consistent, right? It has to be consistent regardless of the circumstances or external factors. But of course, it can be influenced. And it implies that ethical behavior or the moral principles should be upheld at all time, regardless of the situations or the potential consequences. So, um, so when we talk about integrity from his point of view, John D. MacDonald, integrity is something that it is within us, right? So it is not something, and it can be influenced by a lot of factors that build the integrity. It can be from the upbringing of certain people. It can be from their belief, right? It can be from their faith of religion on how they see things, on how they see every single aspect in life, on what is right? So once the belief and the faith is established there, so that is where the principle within you is established, right? So this is what uh, he meant by integrity. And of course, when we talk about integrity, um, it can lead to trust and reliability, right? So a man with integrity or a man with principle is highly likely is going to be trusted and to be a reliable parties to be working with. And of course, with integrity, um, whatever decisions making that one will make, we know that it's going to be ethical. Okay, and integrity also promotes a team cohesions and morale, and consequently lead to good reputations and success. Right, so that is the importance, and I think that is some of the um, thoughts by this person, right? And when we look at the definitions of integrity, right, just to add on to just now the earlier slide is that um, think about like when we talk about integrity, a moral compass. When we talk about compass, right, we always what come to our mind is that compass give us direction, right? So a moral compass is applies the same theory. So it gives you directions, it guides you to act morally, right? To act ethically, truthfully, and especially when no one is watching, right? So the word integrity itself, when we interpret um, or get a definitions direct from a dictionary, it means honesty, right? And it means straightforward and truthful, right? Even no one is watching. So that is your moral compass, and that is part of integrity, right? And for you to have integrity, right? Um, of course, it has to be with courage and honesty, right? Um, to uphold the truth and to make ethical choice regardless of the consequences. You know, like even though um you have to make a certain difficult decisions that you know is ethically right, but you know it may not satisfy a few number of people, especially in your line of work, right? When we talk about integrity, you have the courage to make that decisions, even though it is not going to be favorable from the other side, right? So that's integrity, right? And you disregard the consequences that you could have. You just do it because that is the right thing to do. And of course, we talk about trust and reliability just now, right? Integrity is a foundation of trust. So be it in our relationship, be it in personal, whether it's personal, professional, or societal. So once you have, or once you can be seen as a person with integrity, it promotes the trust whenever you have a dealings with two parties, right? So that is what defines integrity, right? And what I can summarize from here is that integrity, or when we talk about morality, it's about doing right, doing what is right, regardless of what everybody else is doing, right? It is actually the opposite of doing what everybody else is doing, regardless what is right. right? So you just focus on doing the right things. And I think just to summarize from this, a person with integrity would have this mindset that wrong is wrong, even everyone else is doing it, and right is right, even if no one is doing it. Okay, so that is the gist of the summary, or what I can summarize about integrity. Okay, let's move on to another quote by W. Clement Stone, right? And he said that uh, have the courage to say no, and have the courage to face the truth, do the right thing because it is right. And these are the magic keys to living your life with integrity. So this is basically summarized again what I've mentioned just now. You just have to focus on doing the right thing, regardless of the consequences that the other side or the other parties could face, right? Because it is the right thing, and you are doing it because it is right. And what I can say from here is that we don't decide what's right based on how many people are doing it, right? We decide what is right because it is the right thing to do morally and physically. And just because everyone else is doing it, right, except us, doesn't mean that is right. Okay. All right. So um, I touched about my professional experience in the previous slides. And I think professional accountants like us and like myself, we have a specific code of ethics or professional ethics that we have to comply, right? As you can see on the screen, um, it is actually integrated in the MIA, Malaysian Institute of Accountants bylaw, and integrity is defined as a professional accountant shall comply with the principle of integrity, which requires an accountant to be straightforward and honest. Right? Straightforward ni kalau dalam bahasa Melayu dia panggil uh, lurus lah lurus, tapi bukanlah lurus bendul, tapi you stick to what is right, right? And honest in all your professional and business dealings or business relationships, right? And you always focus on what is right. And integrity involve a fair dealings, a truthfulness, and having a strength of a character to act appropriately. So when we talk about having a strength, again, when we look at the previous quotes, we talk about courage, right? So to act appropriately and to act with integrity, you need to have that strength, you need to have that courage, because a lot of pressure will be coming to you, right? Because what is right is something that it is always something that maybe it's not something people want to hear, right? So, and even when facing pressure to do otherwise, or when doing so might create potential adverse personal or organizational consequences. So you disregard all that. Integrity means that you just have to act accordingly. Okay, you have to act what is right. Okay, when you are in the business relationships, you know that clients have to comply with certain laws and regulations. You also have to comply with certain laws and regulations. And you have to make sure, and you always ensure that throughout your dealings or your relationships with the client, you always have in mind that, um, and to ensure that everything you do, every decisions you make, it is actually in compliance with the principle of integrity and focusing on doing it right. All right, so this is what defined in Malaysia Institute of Accountants bylaw, and the fundamental principles. Okay, like what I've mentioned earlier, professional accountants, not just auditors, professional accountants in corporate world can be the CFO, the CEOs, right? The finance managers, the finance team, the professional accountants as required by MIA bylaws, we have to comply with the 5 fundamental principles that is outlined by the Code of Ethics, right? I just want to share a little bit about this, not to go into too much details. Okay, so basically the 5 principles that we have to comply by a professional accountants. Number one is integrity, right? Number one is already integrity, right? So we know that how important that is, right? When in the context of code of ethics, right? So integrity is number one, to be straightforward and honest in all professional and business relationship. And of course, number two is you have to be objectivity, right? You have to exercise your professional and business judgment without being compromised by bias and conflict of interest and undue influence and whatnot. And number three, um, under the code of ethics, the fundamental principles is professional competence and due care, right? You have to attain as well as maintain a professional knowledge and skill, and you always have to act diligently to ensuring a due care is maintained, and confidentiality as well as professional behaviors. So this is fundamental principles that has been embedded and adopted by MIA as well, and it is actually embedded in MIA bylaws. So integrity, even when I said earlier, it is something that is within us, right? In the corporate world, um, I think in the corporate world, when you are the professional accountants, all right, even though you don't have that within you, you have to comply with the code of ethics, right? And that code of ethics, one of the key principles is integrity, right? So just to ensure that I think the code of ethics is the fundamental reasons behind this is to ensure that whatever that we do, it is actually in compliance, and whatever decisions that we make, it is ethically and morally right. Okay, and this is just a little bit of explanations what the code of ethics talks about integrity, right? So we've said that integrity requires an accountant to act straightforward and honest in all professional and business relationship. And integrity involves a fair dealings, truthfulness, and having the strength of character to act properly. So I think we have touched on this just now. And here they give some examples, all right, on acting appropriately with integrity. So A, standing one's ground when confronted by dilemmas and difficult situation. So whenever you face difficult situations, when you deal with clients, right, and especially when that particular situations resulted into a conflict, right? I mean, what is required by the code of ethics when it comes to integrity is you have to stand firm on your ground of what is right? So if you stand firm, I mean, things are going to be uh, morally and ethically right? And of course, acting appropriately. Another example that I can share with you, and I think in fact shared here, is that we always have to challenge others as and when circumstances warrant, in a manner and appropriate to the circumstances. All right. So whenever clients propose to you something that it is you think that and you believe that it is ethically wrong, right? You need to stand by having the firm's decisions, or by standing firms, you should be able to challenge them, right? So this is what we professional accountants is built upon. So this is something that we have to do, and that we have to act upon whenever that we provide our services to our client, and not just us as auditor, right? It works both ways, right? Auditors basically, like myself, we serve or we provide services to the clients, which is our customers, right? The customers or the corporate the corporate bodies, right, in the corporate world, they also have accountants that have to apply, or they have to make decisions, or they have to act with integrity, right? And one of the way that whenever we face situations like this is we can also remind the clients that you also have the requirements, right, to comply with integrity, not just me. Okay, all right. So that's a bit about what we have in MIA. And next, I would like to share the code of ethics from the Islamic perspective, from the accounting and auditing organizations for Islamic financial institutions, AAOIFI, right? But I don't want to talk too much about this because I think from the Islamic perspective, I will not probably be the subject matter expert to explain more detail about this. But let's focus on what is the equations that you can see on the screen, right? Having the right intention and the right mindset, and you need to do the right thing. You need to doing it in the right manner, and engaging with others positively, and that's where you would achieve ad and ihsan, right? So when we look into these equations, all right, doing the right thing and doing it in the right manner, this very much relates to integrity, right? So I just want to reiterate this again. Okay, integrity is as simple as doing things right, right, and standing firm to our decisions that what is right. Okay, so I think in this concept provided by the accounting and auditing organizations for Islamic financial institutions is very much the same, right, with the integrity and the ethical values. Okay, and this is the interplay, right? So I think similarly, you can see that you have uh, the terms taqwa, tawakul, sid, and amanah, quwah, tawasibil, haq. Right. So these are all the ethical values that I think what has been introduced by this code of ethics for Islamic finance also touch and lay down the importance of the integrity in ensuring the ethical virtues or the ethical values of a certain organizations or people. Okay, all right. So that is a little bit about definitions. Um, and I just want to give an example. All right, this is a direct example from our organizations at Salihin. All right, and of course, when we talk about elevating the culture, right, and when we talk about corporate world, it is good that before you start to elevate the culture, you need to understand what is your structure and what is your framework, right? And I always remind right, people, or whenever I have a trainings, that to elevate, before you elevate, right, you need to have a structure first, right? Without a structure, you cannot elevate. You need to have that foundation first, strengthen it, and then you think of a way on how we can elevate that. So in our case, for our case in our organizations, right, you need to have, this is more of a framework, or a guidance or principles that we adopted, that we have at Salihin, right? And you can see down there, that is the guiding principles, in bracket integrity, that we have to that we are having in our framework, we embed in our framework, to ensure that we achieve our purpose, right? So the purpose is always at the top, right? And down there is always be your guiding principles, and one of it is integrity, right? So once you have that integrity foundations strengthened, then only you can move up to achieving your missions, achieving your visions, and attaining your core values, before you reach your purpose, right? So this is where we have to see that, and I think in our case that when we talk about guiding principles, integrity, um, we always strive to maintain a high level of integrity and consistency in our interactions, in our communications, relationship with our stakeholders, and also with each other. Right? We must always do the right thing even when no one is looking. So that is the fundamental principle that we have at our organizations. And I believe these principles would then form a culture if you have the right leadership, right? When you have a right tone at the top, when everyone is doing it, it would lead to a culture. And I believe that that itself will uh, elevate the principles itself to the higher level. Okay. And okay, I just want to touch a little bit about integrity issues in institutions of higher educations or any educational institutions. Again, I'm not the subject matter expert of this, but I think this is of course based on my readings and some of my experience that I have during my time at the higher educations. So before we want to elevate certain things, and especially when we talk about culture, it is always good for us to identify what are the issues first, right? And then we can think about having a policies or a procedures that we want to embed, right, into the culture, so that it can be elevated. Okay, let's look at the overview, right? Some of the issues. Uh, I think uh, I think you would know better than me when it comes to this topic, but I just want to share generally what will be the issues. Academic dishonesty, for example, plagiarism, forgery, group coalition, etc., and unethical conduct by staff or faculty, discrimination, bias, manipulation of research, and whatnot. All right, admissions and grading inequity, right? Biases in gradings, in giving out marks, uh, admissions practices. And of course, these issues, it is very much affected by the pressures and mental health, right? So I don't want to go into details about the issues, right? But it is actually, in fact, rather um, when we talk about integrity, right? Having a proper culture would actually prevent or at least minimize the issues that we have in the educational institutions, right? And the next one, I just want to share. This is one of the journal or an articles, okay, by Bukuri Zajno from IUM, with the topics plagiarism in academic writing among students of higher learning institutions in Malaysia, right? And from these writings and from these journals, the key findings that um, he found or he noted is that high levels of awareness about integrity, right, about plagiarism, but they have varying interpretations of plagiarism among students. Right, some might think that kita copy paste, kita tukar sikit-sikit, it may not lead to plagiarism. Some might think like macam, oh, that is also plagiarism. So that resulted into probably one doing it because their interpretation about plagiarisms is different, right? And another key findings from these writings is that ethical considerations from an Islamic perspective um, influence students' attitudes towards plagiarism. So he stressed the importance of how Islamic perspective teachings or Islamic guiding principles about integrity influence students about the students' attitudes towards plagiarisms. And there's also a gap between awareness and practice regarding plagiarism affected by academic pressures and misunderstanding of academic integrity principles. Okay, so I think it is very important for you for us to understand this. Okay, because the key findings, from these key findings, we know that these are the issues that we have to tackle or we have to address, right? So by identifying these issues, right, with a proper implementations of policies, right, um, you can embed those policies into the current framework of integrity of a certain organizations, or in this case, in educational institutions, right, to uh, then minimize the impact of these key findings and eventually elevate the culture itself. And there's also another writings, right, on an articles by Elena Denisova, the challenges of academic integrity in higher education, the current trend as prospect. And what she found, the key points that she found, and I think is in these articles, is that uh, identifies plagiarism, bribery as a primary integrity issues in academia, right? And she also emphasizes that the need for a robust culture of integrity within educational institutions and propose measures for improving transparency and accountability in higher education. So it is always good that, like what I've mentioned, identifying these issues, then only we can start to think about how we can address that through probably a remediation plan or a recommendations, right? And I think in this writing, one of the recommendations is we need to enhance the policies and procedures related to academic integrity, and we need to foster an environment that values honesty, transparency, and ethical conducts. All right. So yeah, so I think I've talked about the academic educational institutions, some of the challenges, and I mean, I'm not in the positions to talk in more details about educational, because I think there will be somebody that is more expert from me when it comes to educational institutions. But I think later on in the next slide, I will share about some of the issues that corporate world is facing, right, through some of the corporate failures. Later we will go through. We've prepared, and in fact, I've prepared the slides to discuss and to go through with you some of the corporate failures that would probably lead you to wondering why all of these things happens, right? Okay, next we will move on to back to our topics about elevating the culture of integrity. All right, so we are now at a stage of how can we enhance the culture of integrity? Okay. Um, there are some examples. Okay, you can see on the screen. We have leadership example, exemplary, open communication. We have clear policies, enforcement, accountability, training programs, recognition, and award. So I will explain to you each and every examples or factors that could be taken to elevate culture of integrity. Personally, for myself, um, to elevate the culture, right? And in fact, before we talk about elevating the culture, to create the culture of integrity, it is always begins with the tone at the top, right? It cannot be from the operational level, from the staff level to start this culture, elevating the culture or creating the culture of integrity. It has to be top down, right? It always the tone at the top, it is very key in ensuring the culture of integrity it is actually created and elevated, right? So when I talk about tone at the top, is these are the leaders, right, that should demonstrate integrity themselves, right? So if you I think it is uh when you have, it doesn't matter when you have a very robust policies and policies and procedures, when the leaders or no one in the organizations is complying to that, right? Like for example, macam I think I just give you an example lah, easy example. Organizations that probably have a policy for all the staff to come early, 8:30 sharp kena ada. And you have a clear policies and you have a very strong policies there. And I think it is also mentioned that those that does not comply with these policies should be punished, right? So policies is good, right? Procedures is there, but if no one is acting on that, and especially when leaders is not doing it, right, the culture cannot be, the culture will not be there, right? And if the leaders themselves come at 10 or 11, and the staff will start to follow the leaders, probably to suit the timing. And once they are doing that, no actions were taken, no disciplinary actions. So no matter how strong your policies, that culture will not work, right? Cannot be created. So my personal belief, and I believe everyone is on the same view as me. Those that are with different views, I beg to differ. But I believe that the tone at the top is very important, right? The leaders themselves should demonstrate the integrity in the first place, right? Be it the integrity in their actions, in their decisions, in their interaction with others. You have to be seen in appearance by your peers, by your subordinates, right? By your followers, that you are, that you can lead by example, right? So the leader's behavior, right, sets the tone for the organizations and serve as as a role model for the employees to follow, right? So that for me is very important, right? Once you have that, I think even if you don't have a clear policies, when your leader is doing the right things, right, your culture will be there, right? Okay, and that's my number 1 priority, right? In elevating the culture of integrity. Before you want to get a buy-in from the others, right? From your followers, from your staff, right? Leaders have to demonstrate that you can do it first. Okay, that is very important. Next, we talk about communications, right? When we talk about buy-in, we talk about communications, right? And of course, not just simply just giving examples, or being a role model, but on top of that, you also have to communicate, right? You need to have a clear communications. Um, in terms of the organization values, right? And what are the values that we are looking at? What are the ethical policies that we have, right? And what are the expectations from the leaders? Okay, so you have to clearly communicate this with your staff. Um, and also when you communicate, you have to show them the lead by the example, all right, and make integrity a core component of the organizational structure, and reinforce the importance of integrity regularly. So you have to regularly update or communicate to your staff why we need to work with integrity and whatnot. And I think probably I've seen throughout my experience, when I think long time ago, when I was in this client's place, client's office, um, they will have something like a weekly email sent to every staff, that talks about the implications of or maybe some corporate failures that happens in the world, right? So that serve as a reminder to the staff that this would be the repercussion or the consequences if we acted with dishonesty. Right, that's actually a good practices that maybe you could perhaps implement that. And in fact, at IIUM itself, when we talk about communications, right, this integrity talk is one of the way and one of the best way to demonstrate that you have an open communications about integrity. Always remind one another, right? Um, about integrity, the implications and the importance of having those in our life, right? And open communications, all right? So when you have an environment, right? When you have a forum, a platform, and when you create that environments where employees or staff feels comfortable to speak about ethical concerns, that would be good, right? So if you encourage open communications among staff, they will then um, believe that they can voice their concerns whenever they face an issues of integrity, right? Or whenever they have difficulties in certain dealings with customers or any related or other parties, right? So when you have that platform, I think it is very important because it encourage people to open up, right? And you also provide a multiple channels for employees to voice their concerns confidentially. Okay. And of course, clear policies. I think no doubt about this. Um, you on top of the leadership, the tone at the top that we have, encouraging open communications. You need to have a policy so that when you communicate, you know, and the staff know before they buy into the idea of having a culture of integrity. They need to know what is the policies, okay, the clear policies and procedures that communicates the ethical guidelines. Okay, so I gave an example just now. An organization have a policies 8:30. All right, so that's one of the example. Doesn't mean that every organization have to follow, but all these examples have to tailor and customize the organizations. I mean, each and every staff is unique, depending on industries. So you have to ensure that the best policies and procedures is implemented and adopted, right? So the culture of integrity can be created and elevated, right? And um, okay, before I go to training programs, I just want to talk about enforcement, accountability, and recognition and reward. Okay, so enforcement and recognition, this is basically like macam uh, carrot or stick lah, right? Carrot and stick. So when we talk about enforcement and accountability is where you punish people, right? For not complying with certain policies, and recognition is where you reward them, right? And I think probably when we talk about enforcement, of course we have to also look into the also have to customize from one organization to another because each organization is unique. Probably some organizations does not straight away go for punishments, right? But rather they are going for some counseling first or motivation first before they go for enforcements. But what the summary or I mean the conclusions from this is that you just want to you just want to have your staff be accountable. You want to encourage the accountability, and you want to hold individuals accountable for their actions and decisions, right? Regarding integrity, be it punishments or counseling or any other sort of enforcement. So the key words here is you want to make sure that everyone will be held accountable if you are I mean, they will be held accountable for their decisions, right? And um, I think, in fact, it is also good when we talk about accountability and enforcements that you implement a policies and procedures for investigations if there's any allegations of misconduct, and taking appropriate actions, which include disciplinary actions when necessary, right? And that's enforcement. And when you give them stick, you also have to balance on giving carrots, right? We talk about recognitions, all right? So you need to have, and it's good for you to embed in the culture that you recognize and award people for acting with integrity or ethically within the organizations, and you have to acknowledge and reward the employees who can demonstrate that the integrity in their actions and in their decisions, right? So you have to celebrate ethical behavior and use positive reinforcement to reinforce desired behavior. So I think these two things, I think uh, I can see in most organizations they have already adopted this, right? But I think to elevate furthermore, of course, these policies, right, have to be revised from time to time, okay, because things change, right? Things that we used to do 20 years back is not the same as what we have now, right? So it is actually important for us to have this culture, or probably this framework within this culture, including the policies and procedures, to be revised regularly, right? And I just want to touch a little bit about what we don't have here in terms of elevating the culture. And I think this is applicable. I believe it's applicable to all organizations, be it in educational institutions or in the corporate organizations. But I think it is most applicable to the corporate organizations. What I'm going to say, my opinion about elevating the culture of integrity is that you need to have a transparency, right? So when we talk about open communications and leadership by example, right? Transparency is one of the way on how you demonstrate that, right? So you have to be leaders, especially when you want to demonstrate your example, when you want to lead by example, and when you want to demonstrate open communications, you also have to be transparent in your decision making process, right? People would appreciate more if they know um, how certain decisions is made, and especially when that decisions is communicated to the employees, rather than just have decisions and straight away come up with rules and regulation or policies. So uh, transparent, I believe transparency will always do good and will not do harm to an organizations, right? But of course, you have to be wary about the if there's any confidentiality issues. But what I'm trying to say here is that you have to you have to try to be transparent, in especially in your decision making process, in your communication and your actions, right? Because I believe that transparency builds trust. Okay, when you are transparent, when you're open with your staff, right, when you're open with one another, and especially when leaders opens up or be transparent with the staff on certain actions or decisions that they make, right, it builds trust, and it would reinforce credibility, and it will foster a culture of integrity where employees feels that they are valued and respected because we are open up to them, rather than having a culture that, okay, because I'm the leader, I decide, right? So of course you decide, but um, the process in a way, before making that decisions, if it's communicated and why such decisions is made is communicated, it would definitely be a game changer in terms of elevating the culture, right? So transparency is very important. And in fact, I think if we go on to the next slide, I think later on in the next slide, we have the Malaysia Code of Corporate Governance, MCCG, introduced by Securities Commissions, encourage transparency in their reportings, right? So that transparency also is applicable when it comes to the management and the shareholders and the investors, company and investors. So investors would appreciate if the company or the organizations is more transparent to them in terms of disclosing informations or decisions or actions that they've made, right? And I just want to give an example, right? An auditor's report or annual report that disclose a lot of information that they are more transparent about their in terms of what is going on within the organizations is highly likely going to be more valued by the investors rather than those organizations with the annual report that is lacking in terms of the transparency. Right. So transparency, I believe it's on top, the tone at the top. It is very important. And you can take into considerations the transparency into your policies to elevate the integrity culture within an organization. All right. Okay, we move on to the next one, the lessons from the corporate world, right? So since our topic talk about the lessons from the corporate world, uh, excuse me. So before we talk about lessons, we need to know, especially in the corporate world, what are the failures, right? So that we know what are the failures and what are the circumstances, situations that we are talking about, so that we can learn something from it, right? So the lessons from the corporate world in the next slide, I will go through with you some of the corporate failures, but I'm not in the positions to say these corporate failures is solely because of integrity, right? But these are all the case that has been made known public, right? So you can I think definitely integrity plays a role, right? And corporate failures often results from a lack of integrity, but it's not necessarily most of the case, right? So it often results from the lack of integrity within the organizations, and highlighting the importance and of fostering a culture of integrity is very important, right? To address these corporate failures. Okay, let us go with the first case that we have. I guess and I believe that everyone should already know about this thermodynamic case, right? But I don't want to dwell in details with this, right? But I just want to give you an overview of what has been made known public, right? This case involved Securities Commissions of Malaysia charging the company and its officers, right? Company and its officers for submissions of false statement of to the stock exchange. In this case, Bursa, regarding an amount of 6 billion ringgit revenue figure, right? So a false statement or a misrepresentation or a false financial statements, right? In regards to revenue worth 6.014 billion ringgit, right? For the quarter ending 31st December 2020. Okay, this case happens and it is all started by KPMG, whom raised about the concerns regarding a contracts and transactions worth 3.5 billion ringgit, right? That they couldn't verify, right? They are not able to obtain sufficient audit evidence, right? Which leads to a delay in submission of their annual report, and subsequently KPMG, because of the lawsuits and whatnot, they resign because Serba has filed a litigation claims or a lawsuit against them, right? So we all know this case about Serba, right? And we all know that I think somehow or other this case, especially when it involves a submissions of false statement, right? A submissions of false statements, um, a manipulations of figures, right, in their financial statements. That already indicates that that could be something wrong with their um, corporate governance, right? Because we would wonder, all right, for a company to pull off um, a decisions or to make a decisions to make a false statement, especially when a quantum is so huge and it's so significant and it involves billions of ringgits, right? And when you have that actions and that courage to go with that actions and decisions to make a false statements, that already indicates that um there could be lack of integrity in this case, right? And in fact, yes, I think in this case, there's a lot of, I think, in terms of the culture itself within the organizations, the culture itself does not really um, have that integrity in mind. And what I can say is that from the top executive, right, they fails to have that tone at the top, and in terms of certain decisions they make, they are unable to lead by example, and because of that, it trickles down to the staff, um, and everyone is thinking that okay, because the top managements have all these decisions, this is their directions, and it's okay for them to do it, right? So yeah, that's the gist about server dynamic case. Takut nak ulas panjang-panjang, takut nanti ni tersalah cakap. Okay, but anyway, that's the gist of that about server dynamic case. And another case is a long. I think this has been quite a while. Perwaja Steel case. I think this also relates to some political play lah, right? In terms of the management of Perwaja Steel. But I think it is when it comes to Perwaja Steel case, it all started uh, with the appointment of Eric Chia, all right, as the CEO of the company, who were brought in to turn around the company. But somehow or other, when he joined in and served the company for about 7, 8 years, that company turned from 1 billion loss to even more loss, right, at the end of his tenure, with the total debts rising to 5.7 billions, right? And there's a lot of issues with these companies. These informations has been gathered from the public informations, right? There are some financial mismanagements that includes inaccurate accounting records, right? And unauthorized contracts, alleged misappropriation of funds, and dubious maintenance contract. And I think there's also reports claiming that um, the company, Purwaja Steel case, awarded uh, millions of ringgit worth of contract to companies associated to Eric Chia. Okay, so there were also allegations that they involve some cronyism, bribery, involving top executive and government officials, right? What is the importance or the lessons that we can learn from this is that if that company, right, the top persons, the leaders, um, have that integrity in mind and in principle within themselves, I think it is not. I don't think that all this financial mismanagements would happen in the first place, right? Because definitely, I mean, for you to even thinking about inaccurate accounting records or mismanaging your financials. I mean, just an integrity person wouldn't even think about that. What more to pull off such an actions? All right, so this indicates that I think the lessons that we can learn from this is that um, a weak corporate governance um, comes into play, right? A weak corporate governance within these organizations that would probably come from a lack of integrity among leaders, right? Resulted into a weak corporate governance that results into a sufficient oversight from the audit committee, all right, and the accountability mechanism is lacking and resulted into a lack of transparency and check and balances within the organizations, right? So by having the culture of integrity in the first place, all right, all these things can be avoided and not even avoided. This particular even to think about having these things or to do certain of these things is not in the mind of a company with a culture of integrity, right? Uh, so that is very important lessons that if you if your leaders um do not act ethically or morally, right, all the decisions that that he makes and all the values that he created within the he or she created within the organizations would have an impact to each and everyone uh, working in that organizations. They would think that because this is what everyone is doing, this and then this is right, and they will not focus on whether this is the right thing to do in the first place. All right. So this is case number 2, and case number 3. Yeah, I think this one won't involve. Yeah, I think there's a lot of political issues, but of course, these issues also, I think, I believe everyone know about. It's about a contract worth 9 billion ringgit between the Defense Ministry and BNS, Boston Naval Shipyard, right? For the constructions of um 6 combat ships that uh none of the ships have been delivered, right? Yang yalah, I think when we read the news, kapal hilang buat bina kapal tapi kapal tak ada. Right? So this is a very serious case lah, right? Because especially when it involves a contract worth billions of ringgits, right? And um of course, that contract comes with the expectations, right? When would be the delivery? What would be the specifications, right? And if those expectations fails to be delivered, right, that indicates weaknesses in the management, right? And that weaknesses could probably resulted from the lack of integrity or lack of ethical conduct, right, in carrying out the business. Okay, and what happened is that the companies fail to deliver ships within the expected timelines, right? And the company also has been criticized from the end user, the Navy, um, for ignoring their views, right? So they have their own specification and customizations in terms of the ships, but it was ignored, right? And they are changing. In fact, they change the original design to some other designs without proper justifications. And of course, we talk about some financial mismanagement by BNS, right? So all these things, right, by just looking at it, right, by just hearing it, we know a person with integrity and with ethical value will think that this is not a right thing to do. All right. But if in an organizations there's a very weak culture of integrity, right? Probably um there is no actions taken against those that mismanage, or those that I think in the project team, those that deals or communicates with the customers, right? So they feel that okay, they can just do it without any proper actions, because the culture that we have here is that not to focus on doing things right, but just focus on probably some monetary incentive or maximizing profit margins, right? So that leads to all these issues. And the PAC, or the Public Accounts Committee, also report and noted that there's a lack of accountability in the transparency in the project executions, right? That this also signify a lack of culture, because if you have a culture, again, when I talk um again, back to my when we talk about elevating culture just now, I highlighted about the importance of transparency, right? So this is this is when you can see that when you don't have, or when you lack transparency and accountability to your end user and to your investors, this could lead to um, minimizing or preventing that company from having a culture of integrity, right? So um okay, so these are all the three examples of cases, right? Happens, the impact is huge, and you can see that integrity plays a significant role in preventing this, right? And of course, integrity also promotes sustainable business practices, right? Because, um, say for example, these cases, right? Just because you want to maximize certain profits, um, or certain values, monetary values, right? And you get caught, right? And you were charged and you were punished. Is does I mean, what we can learn is that you have to think about whether the short-term gains that you have outweigh the potential consequences that you could face, right? So that's why you have to you have to think about doing these things uh, without integrity could probably just benefit you short term, but the consequences that you could face um, far outweigh the benefits that you could obtain. So that's why integrity plays a role in promoting a sustainable business practices. And when integrity is lacking within an organizations, it can lead to a range of ethical misconduct, right? What we can see here, right? Changing designs without proper justification, final mismanagement, inaccurate presentations of financial statements and whatnot. Um, and ultimately, it will lead to corporate failures. Okay, so how integrities can play a role, right? So when you have the integrity, especially in terms of the value of integrity, it will then serve as a moral compass, right? Like what we have said earlier, it will guide the leaders, right, for an ethical decision making, or for ethical decision makings, right? So when you have that integrity in mind, right, you will then sway around, or swing away from um, even thinking about having all these unethical actions, right? And integrity will guide the ethical decisions making and ensure that organizations prioritize principles, right? They will prioritize principles like honesty, transparency, accountability, and whatnot, right? And when integrity is compromised, right, ethical misconduct such as fraud and corruptions can occur, and it would lead to financial mismanagement and also a violations to the regulatory, right? And integrity can also assist and help the compliance and the governance, right? Upholding the integrity is critical for compliance with laws and regulations. And corporate failures often happen because of a failure to adhere to the legal and regulatory requirements. So integrity will guide, right, and will promote a compliance to governance, so all these corporate failures can be prevented in the future, right? So that is just a gist about the corporate failures. Of course, there's so many corporate failures that you can have a look, but um, I believe that every single corporate failures, um, I think it can lead to a reasons of a lack of integrity, because that decisions is not right, and integrity is focusing on honesty and doing things right. Right? So it's all back to the guiding principles. Okay, next we move on to the MCCG, right? The Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance. I don't want to explain all the details that we have in MCCG. Of course, that would take so much time, right? But um, we know from all these corporate failures, right? The SCs or the Suruhanjaya Security or the Securities Commissions of Malaysia aware that integrity or a good corporate governance play an important role, right, in ensuring or in preventing corporate failures, right? So they lay out or lay down, in fact, certain code of corporate governance as a best practices for uh, corporate organizations to follow, right? And it provides a framework of a control mechanism to support the company to achieve its goals ethically, right? And when we talk about MCCG, okay, I can summarize that there are three main principles of MCCG in ensuring good corporate governance, right? One of it is there's three. Number one is board leaderships and effectiveness, right? And board leadership, when we talk about board leadership and effectiveness, we can link back to the tone at the top or the effective leaderships, right? So that is very important. That is number one priority. Uh, Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance, the tone at the top from the board, top down all the way to the staff have to be effective, right? And you need to have an effective audit and risk management, right? That assists the board in the oversight of the implementations or certain decisions by the board, right? So it's always good that if you can have a leader, right? In any organization, it is good when you can have a leader, um, the main leader or the CEO, and it is good for you to have another leader, an ethical leader, right, that provide checks and balances for the decisions making, for any decisions making made by the leaders, by the CEO, right? So in this case of MCCG, you have a board and you need to have an audit committee, right, and a risk management committee to provide an oversight or to oversee the board decisions and actions, right? And number three is you need to have integrity in corporate reporting, right? So the word integrity is used. That signify integrity is very important even in the corporate world, right? In FCCG highlighted that the company have to have integrity in the corporate reporting. What it means that you have to be honest, right, in your corporate reporting. No financial inaccuracies, no mismanagements, no misrepresentations of numbers, no manipulation of numbers. You have to be honest. You have to be truthful and you have to be transparent, right? To make sure that you have a meaningful relationship with the stakeholders, right? Integrity in corporate reporting. So that's why it is very important, right? All this integrity leads to a successful will lead to a successful business, right? And that is why MCCG issued by Secretaries Commissions highlight the importance of that. A good governance would lead to a success of a company. All right, so the role of leaderships. Okay, I just want to share before we move on to some of the leaders, right? So again, I wish to um, reiterate this point. Apart from having policies and procedures in your firms, uh, you need to have that tone at the top um, effective. All right. So you need to make sure that the tone at the top, the role of leaderships, is there in ensuring that the policies and procedures is demonstrated well, right? Is um, translated into a behavioral example from a leader. All right. So not only the policies on procedures is not only for the staff, you have to demonstrate that leaders also do it. All right. Leaders also comply and apply to the policies and procedures of an organizations. So that's when you can get the buy-in. That tone at the top is very important. It's a behavioral example that a leader sets for his or her employees to follow. And whatever tone the management sets at the top, right? Because it's a top-down approach, right? From the top down, they will have a trickle-down effect, right, on employees of the company, right? So the leaders play an important role. If you want to have that culture of integrity, you yourself have to show and demonstrate that you have integrity, right? Otherwise, I don't think it will work. So the key points here is that um, people or staff, right, in an organizations, people change by your example, right, not by your opinion or not by the policies, just by the policies, right? Like macam, if you have those young already married and have children, all right, children will not follow your instructions, right, but they will follow your example, your behaviors, right? So the same goes to leaders, all right? So they will not change by your opinion, they will not change by you talking, right? They will change by your example. So my advice to the leaders, right? So you have to walk the talk, right? Not just talk, you have to walk the talk and you have to lead by example, right? Okay, I think we are nearing to the end of the presentation. So before we end, I think I will go through with you some of the leaders and how they have how they contributes to the integrity culture. Okay, and I think and then we will then end the sessions with, if you have any question and answers, I will open the sessions up later on. Right, so these are some of the leaders. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. All right, and he has lead Microsoft to have the emphasis that emphasize the importance of culture, ethics, and integrity, right? And he has focused on transforming Microsoft that is more to Microsoft culture to something that is more inclusive, right? Innovative, with a growth mindset. And I think one of the good ideas that he had, and not just ideas, decisions that has been translated into an actions. What he's done is that he eliminate the practices like stack ranking, right? And they start to introduce new performance management frameworks that reward teamwork, collective success. So when we talk about stack ranking, it is a performance measurements that very individual based, right? They utilize like a bell curve. If you've seen before, that you have um in an organization, they have already identified that 20% will be a top performer and 80% will be average, right? And the remaining percentage will be the non-performers, right? So what Nadella has done is that he eliminates this, right? He eliminates the utilization of bell curve to rate and rank the employees based on their performance, and he replaced it with a more teamwork and collective success based, performance based, right? So you reward yourself based on certain project that has been done in a group basis, right? So that eliminates I think that's one of the good idea, right? To integrate into it to eliminate issues that could raise and that could be resulted from that would probably be a manipulations from the individuals to manage their KPIs, or probably involved in some dishonesty and acting without integrity just for achieving KPI, right? So he doesn't want that. He doesn't want that culture to be in, but focus on a collective effort and reward collectively that encourage teamwork, right? So that's a little bit about Microsoft. And we also have Sultan Qaboos. Okay, Sultan Qaboos Oman, I think the man who was known as the one that modernized Oman, right? A country that was reformed by him in 1970. And in fact, I think and there's a story about him that I think he seized power by deposing his own father. But anyway, Sultan Qaboos he prioritized on the stability and unity of Oman throughout his administrations, and he focuses on peace as well as ethical governance, right? And his leadership was marked by an effort to improve the quality of life. He is also known for in maintaining a neutral stance, especially in the regional conflicts, right? And of course, when we talk about integrity, he shows that he embed all the ethical values, right, towards its his throughout his administrations and to his people as well. All right, so he focused on doing the right thing, have a lot of peaceful dialogues, all right, with other countries to ensure and with a vision for a peaceful and prosperous country. Okay, so that is a little bit about him. And of course, we have also other leaders, all right, that do we share all these leaders is that you can probably learn something, right, from these leaders on how their certain of their actions and decisions making and how they lead by example, right? And you can see on the first picture that is Mahatma Gandhi, right? A person from India that fight for civil rights in a non-violent way, right? And right beside him, you have the South African first black president, Nelson Mandela. Okay, and I just want to share one of his quote, right? That demonstrates that a good leadership example. He once said that, as I have said, the first thing is to be honest with yourself, right? You can never have impact on society if you have not changed yourself, right? Great peacemakers are all people with integrity, people with honesty, but with humility, right? So you have to change yourself first. Leaders, it all started with you, right? You have to demonstrate that you are able to change yourself first, right? You are able to act with honesty, with integrity, before you can lead by example and show that you can demonstrate that uh, to your subordinates or to your staff, right? And I think you have on the right side, I think that's Abraham Lincoln, and also that's Martin Luther King from America, right? And I think all these leaders, they especially when they talk about integrity, they said that the foundations of trust and credibility in whatever you do, right? In business dealings, in the business world, or in any aspect of your life, right? The cornerstone of trust and credibility, the foundations is integrity, right? So, um, yeah, I think that's something that we can learn as well from these leaders, right? So before you can, especially leaders, before you want to start to demonstrate your leaderships, right? Before you want to start to lead by example, you could take some of the inspirations from all these leaders. Okay, so the key takeaways, I just want to summarize this in a quote. Okay, whatever that we have mentioned here today, whatever that we have discussed and go through here today in these sessions. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, okay, once said that um, if it's not right, do not do it. If it's not true, do not say it. Okay, as long as you stick to with these principles, I think you would stay the course when it comes to integrity, right? And I think before I hand the session back to the MC, right? I think I just want to recap or probably have some summary to what we have learned. Is that when you want to before and when we talk about integrity, right? Before you make certain actions and decisions, right? Apart from uh, thinking or apart from evaluating that whether it's right? You have to also think about the consequences, right? Think about the repercussions. Um, Reflect yourself, remind yourself, and ask yourself these questions before you make any decisions. Before you make any decisions that involve integrity, always ask these questions to yourself. Is it really worth it to make that unethical decisions? Okay, is it really worth it to do so? And even if you think it's worth it, right, in this world, in this temporary world that we are living, um, would will it still be worth it in the hereafter? So we all Muslims here, if not all, majority are Muslim here. So think about, and we believe that that there will be a day of judgment hereafter. So always think about the repercussions not only in this world but in the hereafter. Okay, so um, I think we have the sessions until 12. We have a few minutes left. If we have any questions and answers, I'll um, try my best to address those questions that you have. But I think this marks the end of my presentations for today. I will hand the sessions back to MC to moderate the sessions or to close off the sessions. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Alif Ikram Muhammad, for the sharing just now. It's very concise and precise about our topic for today, which is elevating integrity culture, lessons from the corporate world. And I open for those who are in our Zoom session and also in live at YouTube to maybe if you have any questions, you can just drop at the chat box or in the live, in the Zoom session. If you want to ask any question, you can just unmute your microphone, right? Okay, so maybe Mr. Alif, while we are waiting for the participants or for the viewers to ask questions, so maybe one for me is when we are doing these integrity programs and so on, right? So how does the companies or the organization itself measure the effectiveness of these integrity programs and assess the impact of on the organizational behavior and also performance?
Okay, thank you very much, Saudara Rafiq, for the questions. Okay, thank you. The questions is on measuring the integrity. So I think that's quite difficult questions to answer, because I think each organizations is unique to its own industries, and how they measure integrity. What I can share with you is that from my point of view in my firms, and especially in an audit firms, right? Um, because we are bounded, right? We are bound and we are guided by the principles of integrity. We are required to comply with the code of ethics, right? And uh, how, in terms of how we measure integrity when it comes to the firms, um, just to share with you that our firms, it's subject to an oversight by a regulator, right? Not just our firm. I think firms within the auditing professions, audit firms itself. So when we are subject to a regulations, they will come and do inspections and raise certain findings when it comes to the documentations that we have and the decisions that we make translated into a documentation in our working paper. And how we personally manage it from our firm level is that we manage in terms of the numbers of issues that were raised, right? And that number of issues raised signify how well are we in compliance with integrity or in the code of ethics as highlighted in the MIA bylaws. So I believe other organizations also um, would have a similar way of measuring. Probably they would measure in terms of the consequences that they might have faced in the past, right, out of certain decisions that they make. Okay, so that's the gist of how you measure, but there's no one measurement fits all for organizations, but there's various ways in how you measure the integrity in compliance with the integrity.
Right, thank you, Salih, for the answer. So might be someone from maybe Zoom or YouTube Live want to ask any questions. We open. You can just unmute your mic. All right.
Yang mana?
Yes.
Berikan ke Susmake. Dia buat kat Susmake. Dia kena bayar ke?
Do you have any questions from the participants? All right. So if you have none of the questions, so we close the Q&A session, Mr. Alif, if I may. All right. Okay, so once again, thank you so much, and we would like to express our deep appreciation to Mr. Alif Ikhwan Muhammad, the partner of audit and assurance at Al Jafri Salihin Kuzaimi PLT, for the sharing session about everything integrity culture lessons from the corporate world. And I hope that those who are in the Zoom session, we had at most just now 80 participants and almost 600 viewers in YouTube, Mr. Alif, and also for all information. And we are very privileged to have had the opportunity to benefit from your insight and also experience. And it is hope that it will increase our knowledge and strengthen the good governance as well as encourage integrity and good values within IIUM. So for a reminder for the IIM committee, don't forget to log in or sign in to the II10, and also to answer the survey of evaluation for the CTD entertainment. All right. So with that, thank you so much for once again to Mr. Alif and also the participants at Zoom and also in YouTube Live. So if have and also thank for everyone for your participation in this program. So with that, we end our program with Tasbih Kafarah and Suratul Nas. Right. So before we end, maybe in the Zoom session, we can open the camera so that we can take pictures. Right. There, so. All right. All right. Okay, we wait for other people to join in to open their cameras. Okay. Smile. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Another one. 1, 2, 3. Right. Thank you so much, everyone. So we see you in the next talk, inshallah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.